ghostly apparitions, UFOs, and aliens, and mysterious creatures lurking in hidden depths around us. These are the mysteries which baffle, yet pique our curiosity. Will we ever prove their existence? Welcome to Paranormal Experienced Radio. Listen as your host and seasoned researcher Kat Hobson discovers new evidence, bringing us closer to the truth with informative guest interviews, the latest paranormal news, investigation advice, and equipment tips. Kat is a lead investigator with SCARE, located in Birmingham, Alabama, and feels that her gifts were given to aid individuals in distress in what should be their safe environments. Now, here is your host of Paranormal Experienced Radio, Kat Hobson.
Good evening. Welcome to Paranormal Experienced with Kat Hobson here on the UNX. I'm so glad to be here. I have a wonderful guest tonight, but before I get to that, I have to speak a little bit to some of the events of the day. As y'all know, that really irritating and dangerous hurricane came ashore in the wee hours of this morning. It came in one of my favorite places on the planet. And I just have to say that for all the people that are trying to cope with what's going on, there's going to be so much help coming your way, and I will do my best to be part of that. We are praying for y'all. We are just hoping that everything is going to come together, that you and your family are together. And just know that there are a lot of people with y'all in their hearts. And I'm so sorry this happened to you. And with that being said, I'm doing my part to lighten up maybe your day, because I have one of my favorite friends. He lives way up in the Northeast. I never get to see him unless we're at an event together, which doesn't happen that often because of COVID, but we're going to get better at that. My guest just happens to be one of those people who has done everything. If there is a television program with haunted in the name of it, you've probably seen him on it, whether or if it's just paranormal, haunting, or a nightmare, he's there. It is Jack Kenna. He is renowned throughout the land. And if we were Scottish, I'd say the realm. He's an author, a public figure. He also is one of those people who is helping to normalize the paranormal. He is an adjunct teacher, and he teaches 101 and advanced paranormal research courses. And that's both at Hudson Valley and Sandy Schenectady. So he's a member of the Spirits of New England and founder of I cannot say this right, I never do, Rensselaer Paranormal Research. He is in real life an engineering technician, senior for the Department of the Army. And he's been on Haunted Case Files. He has been on Paranormal Survivor, Haunted Hospitals, My Haunted Nightmare, A Haunting, and My Worst Nightmare. He is absolutely one of the best people that I know, and that's in or out of the paranormal. Jack, I'm so glad you're here.
It's always a pleasure, Kat. It's pronounced Rensselaer, by the way.
Thank you. Well, it looked French. I was going with that pronunciation.
Yeah. It's pronounced differently than it's spelled, I guess, really. So it's a Dutch word, by the way.
Well, I am just glad to see it, because that means you're here. Yay.
I'm here. It's glad to be here. It's been a long time.
It has.
Yeah.
I have
Even
missed
since
you.
we've seen each other. Like you said, I'm way up here in the Northeast, and you're down there. Hopefully I'll be
way
getting
down there.
Soon. Yeah. Well, I am heading south pretty soon. My son now, my oldest son, lives in Winchester, Virginia. And I've got a grandson, so I'll be going down for his birthday.
Congratulations.
Yeah, the end of the month is his birthday. And I'll be heading down just to see them. He'll be 3 years old. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, time flies,
It does.
It does.
And, it's really amazing because, my grandsons are 8, 5, 4, and then we have a new granddaughter. And it's so much fun In fact, I was just at a flag football game last night screaming like a crazy woman. And I love sports. It is so much fun when they're like bumper kids.
Yep.
You know, they just go right off each other.
That's it.
So, well, congratulations. Though. I didn't know you were a grandpa.
Yeah. Well, a few years now, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
we have got to get together.
My middle son's going to be getting married in May, so actually going out to see him. He's out in Rochester, New York. He's studying to be a doctor, so we'll be going out to visit him and his fiancée this weekend. So,
are you going to investigate while you're in Rochester?
No. Spending time with family. When I go to spend time with family, I just go to spend time with family.
That's the way it should be. I do that too.
Yeah. Although my son did get to investigate with me one time. I went to his college to do an event, so they found out who I was because of my kid. So, they were all watching, I guess, TV one time, and I think one of the case files came out and said, "That's your dad." He's like, "Yeah." He does this stuff. I'm like, "Yeah." You think he'd want to investigate the college? You have to ask him. Yeah, probably. But he had a good time. It's a little weird for them.
It is.
Yeah, it is a little weird for them. I mean, I remember them telling me they used to be like. Kind of like, "Oh, you're doing a TV stuff today?" Yeah. And then when their friends in high school saw me, it got a little bit different because they're like, "Wow, Dad, everybody's like really thinks you're really cool. You're like the coolest dad there is." And stuff. I said, "Well, So then they were a little bit more into it because their friends thought it was cool. So
yeah,
same at work.
It always helps.
Same at work. I remember one time at work. I went down to the cafeteria for lunch, and I hear some of my coworkers' friends talking about me, and I'm like, "You guys are talking about me?" They're like, "Yeah." They're like, "You're, like one of the most coolest guys we know because you're on TV. Nobody else is." So I'm like, okay, if you say so. Because me, I don't think much of it. I
know, right?
Yeah, I don't really think much of it. But it has helped me. I just wanted to say it has helped me get to where I am today with teaching.
Yes.
The courses, which I've always really kind of wanted to do for quite a long time. Probably the last 15 years I've been wanting to do it. And I wrote my one book, Paranormal Research, Comprehensive Guide to Building a Strong Team, in the hopes that I could use that as a textbook for teaching someday. And that actually did happen in 2019. So Hudson Valley, my old alma mater, agreed to let me teach the courses, and I was surprised. I thought maybe they'd be like, we don't want to do that. And I mean, they're just like, special interest courses, after hours stuff.
Right.
It's credit free. But we've been doing it since 2019. We missed out on 2020 just because COVID had hit.
Everybody missed out on 2020.
Yeah. But we started up again in 2021, and we've been still going since then. And like you said, I teach the two classes, a 101 course and the advanced course. And now my students from my advanced course have convinced me it's like, you got to teach a third course now. It's like, what? Wasn't planning on it, but
be careful what you open up, right?
Yeah, like what do you want to learn? I've taught you basically all the beyond the basics of investigating. Like, well, how about some of the other stuff, the little bit darker stuff that you've gotten into or run into? I'm like, you can, but I said I'm not a demonologist, but I could teach you a little bit about that. So I've studied it and stuff like that.
Well, you have studied it. You're one of the strongest investigators for a negative case that I would ever consider calling.
Yeah, I did have that one possession case. I don't ever want to have one of those again. I'll tell you that.
No, I could see not wanting to have another one of those. I had a client that I'm pretty sure was, and I wanted to ask you.
Yeah.
And since you're here, I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
But when you had your possession case, the one that it was not presented as a possession case, it was presented as activity within the home. And
initially it was, yeah.
It really was.
Yeah.
But I really feel like it might have been more elementals than anything else. But this particular client, when she was in the house, the EMF was off the chain, or we're talking 7.6. Okay. And she would walk out of the house, and it would hit baseline.
Okay.
And so then I'm sitting there and I'm thinking something's wrong with my equipment. So I get an additional device. And every time she came in the door, it did that.
Right.
And I was like, there's no TIMS unit. There's no pacemaker. There is nothing on her that should be doing this. What on earth is happening? And one of the devices that I was using happened to have a tap sap on it. So I used it.
Yeah.
Well, and it was doing it too. Jason was speaking at an event where a friend of mine who had helped him develop the app was located. Yeah. So I called my friend and said, you developed this. Why is this doing that? Well, nobody came up with a rational reason for the EMF to be that high. Did you notice a difference in EMF when you were around
in the actual possession case? You would have thought there was nothing going on.
Really?
Nothing at all. No, yeah, demonic cases can be very strange. Sometimes you'll get stuff like that. I mean, I've had oppression cases. They weren't possessed, but they were under oppression, where I've had like high EMF readings, stuff like that. Okay. But in the actual possession case, you would have thought, because they're trying to hide it. I mean, the demon is trying to hide it completely. So you would have thought nothing was going on. Every time we went there, we caught nothing. Except once. One investigation was using the SLS camera, and we caught this figure that was moving around in the living room. And that's the only thing we caught. And even that I was a little skeptical of. But when I presented it to the mother and the daughter had a really negative reaction to it. You wouldn't think so. 16-year-old girl should be like, oh, that's cool. No, she actually, well, what happened was the demonic came out, and it was really ticked off that we actually captured it.
So I could see that.
Like, oh, okay. Well, there's a lot more to it than that. But just to figure out that she was even possessed took a year to figure out. I mean,
it's not.
You go back.
It's not your go-to.
You go back like once every 2 weeks. I mean, it's not like every single day we're back at the house, but you go back every week or every other week, and keep talking to them and working and talking to the doctors and stuff like that about her medications, which none of them worked. She was on psych meds. None of them worked. The doctors couldn't explain why. She was like in what we'll call four winds, and she didn't know we were coming to the house. She'd call up and say, "Why are those people there?" Some things really? Like that. Oh yeah. And then one of the biggest things is one of the ways you start to tell. I mean, you get these telltale signs, and then when she was back home and stuff, what I would do is do silent prayer while she was in the room, and she'd have really negative reactions to that, like severe headaches. Sometimes the demonic would come out and yell at me to stop doing that, and nobody else knew what I was doing. I would silently say the Hail Mary. Right. And now they were Roman Catholic. They were Catholics like I am, so I used those prayers in that regard because that's their faith. And that's what people say, well, why would those pray? Well, in that particular case, they were Roman Catholic, and that was their belief system. So if you were dealing with somebody else, and I've had cases that where the woman was Hindu, the girl was Hindu, so you have to work within that belief system. Don't ask me why that. It's like demons are demons. I mean, we believe them.
Well, they are, but people are susceptible because of their faith.
Yes, so it has a bigger impact if you use their prayer systems, or if you have somebody come with you who's of their faith. That'll do that stuff, say the prayers and stuff properly and things like that. So in this particular case, they were Roman Catholic. So, but there's a lot. There's a lot you go through before I finally went to the exorcist that I know and said, hey, this is what's been going on. Here's what we've collected. What do you think? And he goes, yeah, we need to do an exorcism. So we did. It took 13 hours, and a lot of stuff went on, and it's not something I prefer to do again because there was fallout from it too. I mean, everybody had some negative impact to them.
Really?
From that, yes, yeah. I mean, I still think there was an influence that was going on, and Carly and I talked about it. That's why we broke up. Didn't make sense why we were breaking up, but we did. We had some arguments and stuff, and it didn't make sense. So, and we were strong,
yes,
couple together with doing all that stuff. But in the end, I mean, I think God steps back in because she's pursuing her career. We still live together. I mean, she's got her own room in the house.
Well,
and we hang out together, and she's actually pursuing her career in surgical technology. She's actually teaching herself. So she's teaching that. Yes, she's a teacher.
Well, go Carly.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. She's come a long way. She's going for her bachelor's degree, and she's doing extremely well. So everything happens for a reason. But there was some negative fallout from a lot of that stuff, and we had to recover from it, and including even the exorcist who did that, and a couple of the people that assisted. Like one of the women that assisted, she's actually pretty much lost her voice after that. She sounds like she constantly has a sore, like a sore throat, or I'm trying to think of the other word. Anyways, but so she always has trouble like speaking clearly now. So things like that can happen in true demonic cases. In yours, I mean, it's possible it was either. Did she ever have an exorcism done during your case, or did you guys?
She did not. I actually had a negative experience from that, and I did not go back because
all right.
The reason I thought it could be elementals is because she was like pot shotting fox and animals on her property line and having them taxidermied. And if I were an elemental, that would have ticked me off. Right. And I felt that there were some around her property. But she was, she walked into the room with a rifle over her shoulder, and I was done.
Okay.
I was just not going back. And the team that I was with at that time also, everyone there chose not to expose themselves to somebody that brought a shotgun rifle into the room with them.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like,
so it probably wouldn't have bothered me as much because it's like, okay, as long as you put that down and unload it, we're good.
But she didn't. Didn't.
Yeah. Well, it could be elemental. Now, the thing to remember about elementals is they're not demonic in any way. Right?
No, they're not.
They're of God. They were created by God. They're of God. They just don't like us because of what we do to the land. Right? Yep. And they're not necessarily even against hunting as long as it's for survival purposes. Yeah. You eat what you kill. But if you're just mounting it as trophies and stuff like that, yes, that's where it becomes negative. They will, elementals will try to intimidate, which sounds like what was maybe going on if she was like under a partial possession, because they can possess, but they don't keep you possessed.
Yes.
So they would try to intimidate that way. They actually will not hurt humans, but they'll try, not to where they'll kill you or anything like that, but they will try to do really negative things to intimidate you, throw knives your direction. Not hit you, but they'll hit the wall, they'll hit near you, they'll land near you.
As long as they have good aim, I'm good with them missing.
Well, the point is they're trying to drive you away, right? Even the person who they're really going after, they're trying to really get them to leave, right? And mostly, if you change your ways and become more respective, they'll live with you, And that's the key to dealing with elementals, is trying to appease them by planting gardens, putting out offerings of fruit and honey and even beer, and just put those offerings out outside your home, and just try to let them know that, okay, I'll be more respectful of the land, the property, and usually it'll die down, but yeah, they can be very threatening. But again, they'll never really permanently harm you. Let's put it that way.
Well, I don't think that the person in that place was much interested in putting
teasing them.
No, not
TV
even
lifestyle. Yeah. She might have.
It was a very strange individual, and
well, she could have other problems. She could have other problems too, right? I mean,
well, I'm sure.
Yeah. I mean, we find that with people in oppression or possession cases, they have some mental illness going on.
Normally,
that's what makes them susceptible to demonic.
Yes.
Right? And they need to get help with that. Even after the exorcism's done, they have to stay close to their religious beliefs, their faith, and they have to continue to get help. Because it's usually the mental illness usually caused by something they've been through, some traumatic events they've been through. So they need to get assistance with that. And some do, some don't. And the ones that don't, comes back. Even in an oppression case, the demonic will always come back. They're just waiting,
Well,
just waiting.
And, I think that's what's just so insidious about that whole realm of paranormal.
Yeah.
The fact that you can never let your guard down once you've drawn the attention.
Oh, correct. Yeah. I mean, even for us who assist in those cases,
mm-hmm.
once you've gotten involved with these type of cases, they know who you are. I've had my given name called out many times through devices, mm-hmm. and I don't use my given name on investigations or things like that. Everybody knows me as Jack, but that's not my given name.
Right.
It's John. So
Do they come at you with your given name?
Yeah, they'll call out my kids' names too. Yeah.
That's always fun, isn't it?
I gotta say, no, don't go there. Well, luckily for my case, my kids are actually very close to their faith too, so extremely close to their faith. So they've never had anything negative come of anything I've been involved with, which is good, So, I mean, I've told them that. I said, just always, stay. You guys are closer to your faith probably than I am. So, it's the same faith. I'm all Roman Catholic. But I'm like, yeah, good thing you are because of what I do. So, but they've never had any issues or any problems. But these things will threaten you that way. Yeah. And that's the difference. That's where elementals won't. They won't threaten that way. Mm-hmm. They just threaten the individual who they're having an issue with, or the family that's living with them. But they won't typically, go after a family member. They won't threaten in that particular way. So, it's just interesting. There's very subtle differences between the two. That's why sometimes it's hard to tell. That's why it takes so long.
Well, that's why you have to be willing to actually do the work if you're going to do things in this field.
Yeah.
Because if you go off half-cocked at something like that, you can get someone in a lot more trouble than they were to start with before you got there.
Yeah, especially if you don't know really who to turn to for the real help later on, when you do run into something like that. Because like I said, I'm not an exorcist. I can do certain prayers and things like that, but you have to know somebody who is an actual exorcist if it comes to that. To actually, even in an oppression case, they do need an exorcism, and you've got to call out an exorcist to do that. There are layman's prayers for that if somebody is Catholic and stuff like that. And again, if they're a different faith, I've got to reach out to priest, minister, whatever you want to call it, of their faith, and get them involved. So, and they've got to help them.
It's really interesting because, I had a situation here where I had to cleanse my home. Mm-hmm. And it was very surprising because I was not expecting that. I was sitting on my couch.
My home too, trust me, yeah.
Well, I was just sitting on the couch. I have dogs. I've always had dogs. Yeah. And I was just sitting on the couch in the living room and just glanced down the hall and saw an animal jump from the bed through a mirror. And I was oh, well, that's not my dog.
Yeah,
they can't
my
do
dog
that.
Doesn't jump through mirrors like that.
No.
If they tried to, they'd break.
Right. So I'm sitting there thinking, okay, maybe I'm sleep deprived. I'm just going to not even worry about that. No, not doing anything. And so I pondered it more, and I thought, given what I do, I should probably talk to somebody who knows more about this than I do.
Right.
So I did. And it was just suggested strongly that I utilize the prayers that were sent to me and take care of that. And I'm really pleased that I did, because my whole house was so, it just felt like you had left the windows open and let sunshine and fresh air blow through the whole thing.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, okay, there's my experience with that, and we will be very much more cautious when we leave somewhere.
And that's the thing when you do get involved with negative type cases too. A lot of times these things will try to, they'll come home with you, they'll try to interact with you, so that you won't go back to help, right? So they will try to do things. I've always noticed, I can always almost tell when I have like a demonic case, because my GPS will try to make me go home. It'll tell me make a U-turn. Make a U-turn. The minute I leave the house, I get like less than a mile down the road and it says, make a U-turn. Like, why?
I have had that happen going to an investigation. I would never have thought that was it.
Well, sometimes it is. Sometimes it's just your GPS messing up. But every single time I've had like something with a darker side to it, it's always like suddenly my GPS could be working perfectly for months on end, and then all of a sudden it'll do that and act up and tell me to turn around and make a U-turn. It's like, I can't make a U-turn. I got to go where I'm going. So I have to shut it off, restart it, and reset the whole thing. I had one time I was heading up, and the entire date and time changed on it, and
really?
Made it look like I was a day early. Yes, yeah, and I actually had to pull over, reset the whole thing, and for it to get back on track, because it actually stopped, bringing me on the route to it. Just the route just went off, and it gave it completely different date and time on the phone. It's like, all right, that doesn't happen. Come on.
Right.
So
not the whole thing.
No, literally, just the date and time completely changed. And it was like an hour later and a day earlier. It's like, no, I know what day and time it is. So I had to reset the whole thing. So, and the funny thing was, it didn't want to reset. It took me about 15 minutes. Pulled off to the side of the road trying to fix it. So it was strange. Yeah, it was strange, and that was a demonic case, where somebody was under an oppression. So The family was under an oppression. So
the whole family?
Well, it's 2 members of the family. There was 3 members in the house. So, it was very strange. But there had been a long history of something being on that property. And the funny thing was, there had been where the new house was, there had been an older house there, owned by the same family, and they had tore it down, and they filled in the basement, and they were telling me how, our grandfather he never liked going in his basement, but we remember going down there, and he'd have crosses up all over the place in the basement. Like,
Well, that might be a flag.
Yeah, it was a flag. It was definitely a flag. I'm like, well, did anything ever happen to him? And she said, well, sometimes he'd come up from there and he'd be really angry and upset, and then he'd, would calm down after about an hour or so. I was like, was he a drinker? Because you got to ask all these questions, right? Like, no, actually, he didn't really drink, except on holidays and stuff like that. Or I'm like, okay, all right, so that's odd. So he's impacted by something, right? If it happened every time he went down there, and he has all these crosses on. So, but his little workshop was down in his basement, so that's where he,
that's where he had to go
work on his stuff. Yeah, because he was a farmer, and he would, have his workshop down there to work on some things he needed to, stuff like that. So it was a very interesting little case, and they were still having problems in that part of the building where the old basement was that had been filled in. So at some point, actually, I was able to not get completely underneath it, but I was able to reach underneath, and I salted the ground underneath, throwing salt underneath there, and doing
do what you got to do.
Yeah, and it helped. I mean, it helped a little bit, but we never did an actual exorcism on the place. No, I shouldn't say that. We did. We did do. I did call in Steve, and he did do an exorcism of the building. Because it wasn't really a person who was possessed. I mean, they were being oppressed by whatever this was, but it was in the building itself because it was there when they weren't there. And that's another thing. If somebody is, like you said, the woman there, if somebody is kind of possessed by something, things only happen when they're there, right? I mean, it's on the person itself. So
right.
So the building itself really may not have an issue, but in this particular case, we were investigating and we were having crazy things go on while we were in the building, and that could have also been an elemental. I mean, we never totally figured it out, but and the exorcism really didn't completely help, which tells me it probably is an elemental because exorcisms won't work on elementals because they are of God, so they don't work on them. But there is certain things you can do, and we did try to do the appeasement thing, and that seemed to help. So,
well, that would be an elemental key too.
Yeah, it was a key for an elemental, but they were being oppressed by this thing. The thing was, they weren't terrible. I mean, it was 3 women, and it was all family. It's a grandmother, the 2 daughters, and her grandmother, daughter, and her granddaughter, the granddaughter, her child. So. And they weren't hunters. They weren't anything like that. They took good care of their property. But first, it may have been just related to the family itself. It kind of almost makes a little bit of sense that it was happening to a farmer, because you're using the land to make money, right? So so they could be upset that way. And it was in an area of northern New York, way up near Plattsburgh. Where there's a lot of elemental stuff up there, up in the Adirondack areas. It wasn't in the mountains, but it was in the plains around the mountains. So,
well, in the Hudson Valley area, is that anywhere near there?
They're further north. They're not in the Hudson Valley area. They're in the Adirondack region, and above the Adirondack region. But it's still all like farmland and very rural, it's not like you're in the cities or the suburbs. It's on the outskirts. So there is a lot of Native American stuff up there because actually Native Americans lived. They used to have a place where they would come to literally right across the road from them, which is now a little bit of a small park. In regards to that and to the Native Americans. But there was also the during the part of the Revolutionary War, but also part of the French and Indian Wars took place up there. And there was a battle across the way from them too, about a mile down the road. That's also another national park. So a lot of stuff going on there. A lot of stuff, and they weren't too far from the, it is part of the Hudson River, but it's not considered the Hudson Valley. I'm in the Hudson Valley. All that. Because we're down in the valley. We're out of the mountains, down in the valley. That's why they call it the Hudson Valley. But they're in an area where it would make sense for elemental spirits or Native American spirits, things like that. So,
that is so interesting to me because we have a lot of Native American battlefields who, these were, historically,
right,
the same period, just different areas. But there is a area that there had been a truce declared. The women and children that were left in the village with the older people knew that, and so. Because apparently their word traveled much better than the military's did. Right. And the military, a unit came through there, and when the Native Americans came out to greet them, they were slaughtered. And I have had so many cases out there. It's just really an astounding thing. And I had no idea that was the land history until, well, there was a marker and I saw, my partner and I saw that. And then, I went back and did some research because I love doing that. But it's my favorite
part
part.
of it.
Well, it's my favorite
figure
part.
Things out once you do the research,
Yeah, I mean, because in that instance, you were able to put 2 and 2 together and figure out why there was still activity, happening there. And it's just, I think it's the shock and sense of betrayal that was affecting the client within his home that was like, not even a half mile away from there.
Right.
So
those spirits, they travel,
Well, they can. And it was a very rural,
right? So,
No, but I'm working on it.
Aren't we all?
I'll find out when I get there, right?
Yeah, save that. So I'll find out when I get there.
Yeah.
That's what I always tell people. Yeah.
But, I know that you said that you're not a demonologist, but you're actually very good with negative cases. And, I mean, if I had to go to, it would be you if I had,
Well, I do a lot of
reading.
I read all the books, and I've got a couple more to go through by Father Amort, who was a Roman Catholic exorcist for the church, for the Pope himself. So,
will you say his name again so that our listeners...
Father Amort, and I've got one of his books over here. Hang on, I can spell it for you guys. Hang on just a second. Okay, so I got one of his books right in front of me. It's titled "An Exorcist Explains the Demonic." I'm almost done with this one now. And it's Father Gabriele, Gabriele, Amort, Amorth. It's spelled differently than it sounds. So it's Father Gabriele Amort, Amorth.
Well,
and if you
read it down.
You can just put in his name on Amazon or whatever, and you find all his books there. He's got quite a few he's written. But I study these. I highlight things in the book that I think are relevant to my, go back and look up if I need to, things like that. And so he discusses a lot of it, and you can learn a lot from those books. He was the church's exorcist. He's passed away now, but he was a church's exorcist, and he's very knowledgeable that way. He did it for a very, very long time. So, and a lot of people don't realize that even the Pope, our current Pope, is an exorcist himself. So,
I did not know that.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. He's when he was living down in he's in South America. He was down in the well-known Rio de Janeiro. Down there, he used to go down he used to go around and do exorcisms for people. So yes, he's an exorcist himself too. Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, it's interesting to find out these things as you search into it. Well, it came up one time shortly after he became Pope, and there was an individual in a wheelchair, and he was out with the crowd, and he went and did a blessing, and they actually saw the person begin to shake and then collapse. And when they woke back up, because they had been being oppressed, or I don't know if they were possessed or just oppressed or whatever, but a lot of their illness went away after that. And so actually every pope who's ordained pope actually has, they say they have dominion over the demonic, because they represent, the Pope represents, God himself. So
yes.
So he's given those powers through God to exorcise people. But again, our current Pope was an exorcist already as well. So so he definitely believes in all that. So do I, after what I've witnessed. So.
Well, I was going to say, I'm pretty sure that you have no doubt.
Well, I always believed in it, but until I actually saw it, it becomes a whole different thing, Well,
it's a difficult thing. I mean,
it is.
Because we are actually spoon-fed demonic possession as entertainment.
Yes. Yeah.
And, oppression as well.
Yeah.
And, is a societal norm now.
Yeah.
And I remember, oh my goodness, I can't remember the name of it, The Omen. But, but when I was a kid, I went to see that.
Yeah.
And when I left, I'm the only person that was upset by that film. I was like, how is this possible? How can you sleep? I mean,
hey, I saw The Exorcist as a kid.
I was not allowed to.
Well, my father had taken it. He didn't know how bad it was, and my mom and dad took it. So I actually sat in the back of the car and just laid in the back seat. I didn't watch most of it, but it affected me. I mean, I was terrified after that. Like, wow, this stuff really exists. And so I think I was maybe 7 years old at the time. Yeah. So it was before they had ratings for kids and all that stuff.
Right.
Anyway. So
I was older than 7, but my grandma had read the book.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so. It was at our drive-in, which, next to our bowling alley, and I wasn't allowed to go to the movie, so I just stood out in the parking lot with my friends and watched it from there.
Sure. Absolutely. Why not?
But it was something that it affected my grandmother, who was gifted and spiritual, and it was something that I was just like, oh. No, after I saw The Omen, I really wasn't. And to this day, I still do not watch horror movies, much to our mutual friend Rick's dismay. I've never seen anything he was in except for Naked Gun 3.5, right?
Yeah. I've seen a few of his things. I haven't seen even all of his movies he's been in, but I've seen a few of them. I mean, the horror stuff, I take that with a grain of salt. But
Well, yeah.
But interestingly enough, I will tell you this, because... what's his name, who did The Exorcist, who actually, was directed The Exorcist, he actually had interviewed Father Mort about it, about, exorcisms and what goes on. And when the film was finally done, actually Father Mort came to him and said, that was the best, most realistic exorcism he'd seen, with the exception of the spinning head and... because that doesn't happen. Nobody spins their head around,
Well, but, not with it attached.
Vomiting and all that stuff, and how they can actually, the body can be, damaged that way and stuff like that. He goes, yes, that actually does happen. And during our own, we did physically watch the woman physically change, because it ended up jumping over to the mother because we didn't realize she asked it to, but we watched her in the very end.
She asked it to leave her child to take it on herself.
Said, take me instead of her, kind of thing. The thing of it was always really connected to the mother, because we didn't find this out to the very end, because she never told me she never told us, I guess, really. When she was 17, she committed suicide. Because of some stuff that happened to her. She was, raped a couple times by a friend. There was a lot of other stuff going on. She was put in a home because her mother had passed away, and her uncle had taken advantage and taken all her money that her mother had left her, and there was all these horrible things that happened to her. But the kicker was, the last one was this friend she thought she had made there, raped her twice. So she actually cut her wrist, committed suicide, and she died. And she knew she was in hell. She actually described hell, which is not what people think it is. It's the absence of everything.
Yeah.
You are just in pitch darkness. You can hear the screams of the tormented, which is just like you. And you can feel that you're separated from God. Although she was praying to God to give her a second chance, help her, whatever. And she came back. And she said the doctors couldn't explain how she came back. She was dead. They were ready to call it, and all of a sudden she came back. And I said, well, what brought you back? She goes, so God must have heard me. I said, no, God didn't hear you. I said, the demonic brought you back. They want out of hell too. So it used that as a chance to get out of hell by bringing you back to life.
Interesting.
Oh, yeah, they will do that. They don't want to be in hell either. Trust me, they don't like it there either. And Father Mort talks about that in his books and stuff like that too. but they don't want to be there any more than you do. So it took it as a chance to get out. But she stayed close to her faith after that. So she always had problems and issues more so than anybody else. And she always felt depressed, but she stayed close to her faith. So it was never able to possess her. Now her daughter had some things happen, and it finally was able to take possession of her daughter. So
I want to ask, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I think this is a strong point that people should be aware of.
Yeah.
So when she died and she was in hell, did she go to hell because she was a suicide?
Yes.
Okay. So when she
that's
came
what she
back,
felt anyway. That's what she believed. Okay.
Well, that's what matters.
I should clarify. That's what she believed, because she committed suicide. She went to hell.
Well, and that's a very powerful thing, because belief makes reality.
Right. Because she was always strong in her faith. She always was strong in her faith, because her mother was.
Right.
So it could be she went there because she truly believed she had, really violated things. Yeah, and I've had connections sometimes with others who committed suicide, and it seems like they didn't go to hell right away. It's like they're given a chance to redeem their spirit, at least anyway. But there's things they have to do before. So they're kind of held in what you would call limbo, purgatory, whatever you want to call it. So I think it depends. It depends on, it could depend on the individual or what they believe, or, now I like it with that one that I did actually, because I am psychic and somewhat of a medium. Right. People don't know that, but I don't talk about it much. This was in response to, a friend of mine coming to me because she was having dreams of this friend of hers, and they seemed real, like he was really there. So I was able to connect with him, and that's what he was saying. Now, I don't know what his faith was. So it could be, if he was different faith, they have different beliefs, and things work differently. So that's a whole weird thing. And people, well, why isn't it the same? I don't know.
Because we're individuals, and we were created as individuals.
Yeah. But see, people often just default to the Christian side of things, and it's like, you can't do that. No. Because it could work differently for somebody of a different faith, or somebody who doesn't believe at all. And they find out differently when they get there. So,
which is not the time to find out.
No. Yeah, I would say also, just because they're whatever, it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to go to hell right away.
Well, it doesn't.
I don't think. It depends on how you live your life, right?
Well, it depends on what you're exposed to as well.
Yes. Yeah.
If you don't have knowledge, you can't be held accountable.
Right. Not all people who don't believe are, immoral, they could still have morals, and they could still have belief in something else. That, I don't believe in an afterlife, but you should still be good to other people, Well, don't take advantage, things like that. Because I know a few people who don't believe, but they're good people. I mean, they just don't believe in anything,
Well, or they have had experiences that...
At least they say they don't believe it.
Separated that.
Yeah.
So,
well, funny thing is, usually you'll find they were raised in some type of faith. They just don't follow it. They say they don't believe in it. Do they not really believe in it? I don't know. Part of them probably still does. You know what I'm saying?
Well, usually though, if somebody's brought up in faith, there is a separation event.
Right.
That causes them not to have the belief system to support that.
Right.
But, or that's been my experience. I don't mean to be sounding like a,
No. That's true. They could be convinced by other friends as they went to college and things like that, or even in high school, or teachers. Like, oh, that's not really real. You understand your faith really isn't real and stuff. And they, because they're younger, they fall for that. So it's like, oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah, I could see, your perspective. So, that's what happens. So sometimes people just stop believing.
That's true. Although they should listen to Journey.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. That's so. Don't stop believing, right? So,
exactly.
They there's so many different things, but in some cases, in this particular case, she probably felt realistically, if I get into what she was talking about and what the woman believed, she probably felt she deserved to go to hell for what she did.
Probably.
So she did, you know.
Well, but
because she never talked about facing she never talked about she went in front of, you know, God and was judged. She judged herself, I think.
Which can be bad enough.
Yeah. Don't be so quick to judge yourself, because you might be, you know, somewhat forgiven for what you did and have to do something. But I believe in her case, she may have just, you know, I deserve to go to hell, and I went to hell. Yeah. So she went to
we have got to take a break. We are coming up on our hard break. But when we come back, I want to talk about some of the things that you are teaching. Sure. And because, you know, I always think those things are fantastic. And you're one of two people I know that are educating publicly on the paranormal. And I think that's just the most cool thing ever. So we'll talk about that when we come back. And for everyone listening, thank you so much. We'll be right back. Catch you on the flip side.
The UNX Network Year 2 anniversary at XCon 2023. XCon is being held this year from October the 30th to November 1st at the beautiful Oasis Hotel and Conference Center in Springfield, Missouri. Top speakers include host of America Unearthed, Scott Walter, plus Haley Ramsey, Sev Tak, UNX's very own Maureen Richmond and Dan Terry, Mindy Toutfest, Harriet McFeely, Forrest Crawford, and many more. And they're all coming to deliver new information on topics like UFOs, alien encounters, cryptids and ancient secrets, and real hauntings from the afterlife. Join us for the film premiere of A Haunting in Blue Hill. And don't miss the Mad Hatter Paranormal Halloween Bash, Banquet, and Costume Contest on All Hallows Eve, October 31st. So join us as we close out the 2023 conference season. Info and tickets are available now at unxnetwork.com. That's unxnetwork.com, and we'll see you there.
Medical Mary has the highest quality CBD products to enhance your health and wellness goals. Our cutting-edge formulas are not only made with the best ingredients, but also are curated to target specific needs for the body. Use CBD for energy, weight management, pain and stress relief, beauty, sleep quality, pets, and more. Our motto is people helping people. Start your journey into improved health and happiness with Medical Mary CBD. Available at medwoman.medicalmarypartners.com. That's medwoman.medicalmarypartners.com. Or visit my website, margiek.com, for a link. I use Medical Mary and I love it, and it works. I sleep better and feel better thanks to Medical Mary CBD. Visit margiek.com for more information.
Olivia from Washington. Laid off and trying to keep our little kids from realizing that Mommy and Daddy haven't eaten in a while.
Roger from California. I'm grateful we could afford our son's surgery. I'm nervous that now we can't really afford food.
Daniel from California. Choosing whether to pay the rent or pay to fix the car to get to work doesn't leave us with much at all. Now we can't even pay for meals.
Donna from Louisiana. The storm just hit, and we went from donating to the food bank to needing it.
Keisha from South Carolina. I've been skipping meals so my 2 kids can eat, but filling up on water doesn't really work.
Hunger is a story we can end. End it at feedingamerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
What's up, saucerheads? This is Ryan Sprague, host of Somewhere in the Skies, where each week we bring you the latest UFO news, featuring interviews with some of today's leading UFO researchers. We also take a look back at fascinating UFO cases of the past, and we feature a series called Witness Accounts. where you tell your UFO stories. Every week is truly something different, so be sure to check us out every Wednesday at 1 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on the UNX Network. And remember, keep your feet on the ground, but never stop searching somewhere in the skies.
Another great book hot off the press. The 50th anniversary of the Southeast Missouri Ozarks UFO Flap is now available on Amazon. Missouri Mutual UFO State Director Debbie Zagelmeyer and Assistant State Director Margie Kay collaborate on this unique book about the 1973 UFO flap that made worldwide news. Find out about Dr. Harley Rutledge's investigation at the site and why Dr. J. Allen Hynek, Ted Phillips, and other high-profile UFO investigators were so interested in what was going on in Piedmont, Missouri, and nearby areas. Debbie and Margie worked on this project for over 10 years to pack this book with the most relevant information for the public, and in fact, this area is still a hot spot for UFOs and sightings to this very day. Visit unxmedia.com for this book and many more publications. That's unxmedia.com.
We are the contact for alternative research topics. The X.
Welcome back for the second hour of Paranormal Experience with Kat Hobson. I'm so glad that you are here. You know, there's so much to learn and so much to talk about. And when you have a good friend on with you that you haven't seen since you were barely walking, then, you know, it's really a special time. And Jack Kenna is my friend. He is a well-respected and fantastic paranormal investigator, as well as an author and a teacher of the paranormal and a public figure. He's been on all kinds of shows. And, you know, he started, well, I guess Haunted Case Files was your first because you were the lead on that. But you've been, huh?
I'll correct you on the Paranormal Survivor.
Survivor, thank you. I'm sorry.
Very first one I did. No, that's okay.
But I just think that's really neat because you've been on Paranormal Nightmare, A Haunting, My Worst Nightmare, Haunted Hospitals. I mean, holy cats. There's so many. And it covers a broad spectrum.
Just one or two.
Well, maybe. Yeah. But, you know, I really think that your writing is also good. You know, you've got the graphic novel and, you know, Spirits, the Forgotten Souls of the Bay Path. And then you've got your paranormal research book, you know, The Comprehensive Guide to Building a Strong Team. It's really neat, the things that you have done to be able to bring knowledge about the paranormal to people that are interested in investigating it and investing in it. It is an investment.
It is an investment.
A big one.
Of time more than anything else. Well, maybe money too, but time.
Well, a little bit of both. Once you get the equipment, then you're spending more time, you know, trying to understand what on earth you're getting with it.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
You know, it's really an interesting thing to me that you even got involved in this. And I've really never asked why. Why do you do this?
It's a good question. I ask myself that all the time.
I know you do.
It's not even a joke. Some days I do ask myself, why am I... You know, I can sit back, relax, just take vacations more often. Why do I do this? It's like, well, I know why I do it, because I want to share my knowledge with other people who are really interested, and that's why I started the classes and stuff. And because people spend money to go to those. I mean, the college charges a certain amount. I get paid a certain amount. I don't get paid much. I get like $25 an hour for each of the classes I teach. You know, so I'm not making a ton of money. You know, but so people say, well, why do you do it? I said, because I enjoy it, and I want to see some kind of consistency in this field.
Yes.
Coming from an engineering field myself, I work in engineering. There's certain courses, certain classes, everything else you have to take in order to be. I'm not an engineer. I'm an engineering technician, but still, certain courses I had to take to be able to become an engineering technician. And there's ways it's taught, and certain things you got to know. And this field isn't really much different. I mean, realistically, it's you're not going to do it as a. I suppose you could do it as a business, but you're not really going to do it as a business. But if people who are really into it and they really want to investigate and they really want to learn how to help other people by doing residential cases and things like that, then there should be some kind of consistency to it. And there should be a certain amount of knowledge you need to have, I think, to be able to help people properly, if that's what you really want to do. Because half the time, I know some teams that will get involved with client cases and they just, they investigate the people's house and they give them what they find and say, okay, here you go. They walk away.
Yeah.
And how is that helping anybody?
I've never
still
found
got the same problem. They still got the same problem they had. Their house is still on it, So you may have helped them that, okay, they don't feel crazy. They know stuff is really going on, but you haven't really helped them resolve what they've asked for, which is help to resolve what's going on, right? So I'm teaching that. That's a big part of what I teach is, not just the use of the equipment, not just, here's all this equipment, here's how it works, here's how we can use it for what we're doing. I have a good understanding of a lot of the equipment because I use it in my work for the Department of the Army. So I know what it's really designed for. And I know how it really works, and I can teach people how it can work for what we're doing and why it will work for what we're doing, regards to measuring energy and, making communication and stuff like that, or, getting communication with spirit and stuff like that. But I teach spiritual protection, which is important because you're talking about a spiritual realm. So people always... one question I always ask all my classes when they first start the 101 course, what do you think a ghost is? And I ask them, what do you think a ghost is? What do you think you're trying to talk to? And I get the shrugs and they're like, well, spirit. Okay, so what's a spirit? A ghost? All right, what's a ghost? It goes that roundabout. So I tell them, I said, do you believe you have a soul? Well, yeah. That's what we're talking about. A human soul. You're talking to a human soul. They just, they don't have a body anymore, right? Grant Wilson was the first one that ever talked to me about that. And he's right. It's the actual human soul, and that's what you're talking to. That's what you're trying to communicate with, mostly, right? There are other things, too, and we talk about that because I cover the different types of hauntings and different types of spirits and things like that, because you have elementals and you have demonics and, there's other things out there. So, but mostly what they would run into is a human spirit of some kind, right? It's just a person, right? And they may still be who they were if they didn't cross over, right? Yes. So if they were a miserable SOB in life, they're still a miserable SOB. So it
I have found that to be true too.
Yeah, it can seem negative, or they could be a very nice person because they were a very nice person in life, and they just really like staying in their house. So, or wherever it was.
I agree. I firmly believe that you are in death who you were in life.
Yeah, right. I would say until
maybe amplified.
Right. I would say until you cross over, because once you cross over, all that emotional baggage is left behind.
Right.
You don't hold fears, regrets, all that stuff is let go of. You don't hold anger or, towards other people anymore. You've crossed over. You've moved to the realm of heaven, if that's what you want to call it, which what I believe in. So you're spiritually, you've advanced. All right. So you can move on to the next thing. And most of those will come back in visitation. They're not bound here on Earth. So come back to visit us. It's family could come back to visit family, or to visit a location, or whatever. Something that's meant something to them at one time. So we talk about all. We talk about all that in the classes and stuff. And it's just things we cover. So I do like to teach people, and we also teach them, like in the advanced course, how to do cleansings. I don't like to teach them that in the 101. We talk about it a little bit, I'll show them a little bit, but I want them to get more hands-on with really how to just really go into spiritual protection and how to really gauge towards using the equipment properly. Right? So with the one-on-one course, we kind of focus on those things and how to speak to spirit, how to talk to them with respect, and how you can get better interaction by doing that. So that's a lot of what we cover in the one-on-one course. And we actually go through that. That's why I believe it's important to have an actual investigation. And, so we go through everything with them, and then we let them go and investigate. We're there with them, but we just observe. So I want to observe what they're doing. I don't want them coming to me and say, well, what do I do? I've taught you what to do. Let's see if you know how to do it. We'll give them advice if we notice something, or if they come to me with a question during the investigation, I'll answer them. And I have a couple other friends of mine who are longtime investigators that assist me with that. That way I'm not running around all over the place, because we break them up into 2 teams, and then we break those 2 teams up into 3 smaller groups, and so they can investigate the locations, just like we do with the real team, right? So they're a real team. We make them a real team. And they investigate as a team. They have to do research. They have to do all that stuff, too. That's another part of it all, too. So, but it gets them oriented with how to work as a team, how to really investigate what's required with that, reaching out to the client, so to speak, and asking questions. And for those investigations, we do historical sites. So I have a couple local historical sites that work with me to allow the classes to investigate these places. So, which is pretty cool. That
is so cool. I'm glad. I mean,
yeah, it was surprising really that they actually said yes. I was surprised. It's like most places say, no, we don't want to do that. But they were really excited about it. And I think, and that's where I think, the fact that I'm teaching classes through the colleges, it gains you credibility.
Well, that's what I said when you're bringing the paranormal into the world of normal.
Right.
And you're opening all kinds of doorways.
Yeah. And it has. Even with the 2 locations, they're Shaker Heritage Society is one of them here in Albany, New York. Was one of the original Shaker. It was actually the original Shaker settlement, first Shaker settlement in the United States, or in America, because it wasn't even the United States at that time. Not quite yet. They settled before the Revolutionary War. So it's interesting how that individual there she's a real skeptic, doesn't really believe in any of it, but she's open to letting us in because the Shakers are very spiritual people. And she's seen some of our findings at her place, and she's like, that's really impressive and interesting. She goes, but I'm not still sure I really believe in it. But she's very open to it. That's a nice thing. You have somebody who's maybe she doesn't really believe or is skeptic or whatever, but she's open to the fact of, let's do it. But she got excited because when we did a reveal for them, I thought it was going to be just for the staff, but she opened it up to the public, which was okay. I didn't have, and I let the class actually give the presentation. So the advanced class.
How cool.
Yeah, I let the advanced class give the presentation. And I said, it'll be good for you. It'll be a good, experience for you as a team to give your own presentation. So she was surprised. They had it was well over 20 people that came to it. And most of them were all new to coming to the Shaker Heritage Society. So the woman was able to introduce new people to Shaker.
Well, that was all
the historical site.
That was all her excitement, right?
Yeah, so that was her excitement out of it. She goes, "Wow, there's all new people. I've never met any of these. These are all." She had people raise their hands. How many new here? And almost everybody raised their hands. Oh, I said, "Well, there you go. You got a captive audience. You can show them around after, because it is a pretty interesting and pretty cool place too for the history of the Shakers and stuff." But we caught a lot of evidence there, and it's just the people who were Shakers, they're still there. It's still important to them, So so it can be an advantage to these places. And the other place was Proctor's Theater in Schenectady. And they're very excited. Matter of fact, they got so excited with me teaching the classes and stuff that they had they call it Fandom Fest. It's like a Comic-Con.
Cool.
And they asked me to do the event this year, and they did a ghost tour. So me and some of my team helped them do a ghost tour there, and they're like, we got to do this again and stuff. So it's opening up other doors for other things, and that's where it was nice, because I was talking to you during the break that I had these little business cards made up about my classes, and during that little short 2-day event, I bought like 100 business cards. I went through 2/3 of them. So
I think that's so cool.
Yeah.
And, that really is great, because you're going to be drawing so many people's interest that it's wonderful to have a class to go to.
Yeah.
I would have loved to have a class when I very first started doing this.
The closest thing I had was going to the events by Jason and Grant, the Ghost Hunters events, TAPS events.
Oh yeah, but I'm in the South.
Yeah, right. Yeah. They didn't go down that way too much, I know.
They did not.
Yeah. But I mean, that's the closest thing we had, and we had to travel a ways. We had to go up to New Hampshire and stuff, which is it's like almost 7 hours to where I had to go to even go to.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's still a drive,
All right.
From New York, where I am in Princeton, New York. So, but that was the closest thing we had, and they didn't go into the in-depth like we did. You had a weekend. They talk about cases and stuff like that, and that was the one place I did get one really good piece of information from them. We still use it to this day. It's a form they had come up with, and I even in my book, it's in my book, but I give them the credit for it. It's now it's like a 13-page form. We added some stuff to it, but it collects all this information from the client. As far name, address, all that stuff, but what they're experiencing, but also what faith they are, or their family was, if they ever had any traumatic experiences, what kind of medications they take, all this information, and then at the end, okay, how do you want to be helped? What are you looking for with help? And most everybody is like, I want to get rid of this, I want this to be, out of my house and stuff like that. So it gives us that, and we won't even take a case unless they fill out that form.
As you should not, yeah.
No, because we do the cases for free. The cases, we don't charge anything for. So most of them, it's like, if I'm going to drive 3 hours to come to your house to try to help you with this, at least you're going to do is fill that form out. And it's funny, because people who really want your help, you get that form back in like anywhere from 10 minutes to like the next day.
Yeah.
Others, you never get it back. It's like, okay, well, can't you still come out? No. I'll talk to you on the phone if you want, but I'm not gonna. If you can't take time to fill that out, I'm not gonna waste my time driving 3 or 4 hours to where you are. No, because that tells me you just want to meet somebody from the paranormal.
Well, yeah. Hey, that guy was on TV. Let me go and get him in my house.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
And they want a lot of that.
Yes. Yes.
Crazy.
That's how we learned to use that form real quick.
That's like, logical.
And that was even before we were on TV. It's like, oh yeah, because we went to one place one time. We got there, and it wasn't just a family; it was all these friends, and they wanted us to do a ghost hunt in their house for them.
I have been there, done that.
Yeah. So
walk in the door, and there's all kinds of people standing around.
Yeah, and we kind of did that, and it's like, okay, we stayed a couple hours and we left. And it's like, all right, that's it, we're done. Because they didn't have it; they just wanted to do a ghost hunt.
They just wanted to see you ghost hunt.
Yeah, well, free ghost hunt. Yeah, that's all. So we never did that again. so that's why we use the form, and that's part of what it's in the book. They get my textbook in the 101 course. It's part of what they pay for. It's included in the class, as is the investigation. So so like I said, people are there's a lot of people coming to these things. I take no more than 16 people per course. You have to take the 101 before you can take the advanced. So anybody in the advanced has come from the 101 course. But we fill both classes. these days we fill both classes. So, it's good. People, it tells you people are really interested. There's more interest out there than we think there is. Because people, if you're spending like $125 or $160 to take a course, you have to have an interest in it.
Well, you do, and you have to have a reason for seeking that knowledge. And, something that I have found, and this may just be in my world, but I don't think so, is that especially during COVID, activity jumped, or reported activity at any rate jumped.
Reported. And go ahead, but I'll give you my thoughts behind that.
Okay, but, and it was really like people's houses were just acting up. It's just like, just tell it to stop. Just tell it no. Just, and because, A, I'm not coming into someone's house when I don't know if they're taking care of themselves. And B, I didn't have anybody to go with me.
Right.
Nobody else was going to go either.
Yeah.
But, I just found, and I don't know if it was because they were lonely or if they were home alone so much more and they were noticing things that were happening in the home.
Yeah.
But I think that probably tended to be more the case. But
that's what I was going to say. That's exactly what was going on. You remember, most people just started to notice because they were home.
Mm-hmm.
And you could say, well, people are home at night, yes, but they have so much going on in their lives, going to work, stuff at work, this and that, that they're not thinking about it and they don't pay attention to it.
Oh.
Right? Now they were trapped.
Yes, literally.
Literally. And they, didn't have as much to really occupy their time or occupy their minds, so they would notice all this stuff. Yes. And I would, they'd like, you got to come out and help me. I said, you don't really need help. I said, all this was going on before you were locked in your house. You just didn't notice it. I said, just start to ignore it like you did before. I said, or just tell it, talk to it and tell, like you said, tell it, just, hey, cut it out. I've got stuff I've got to do. I don't need you bothering me. Just talk to them that way. I talk to a lot of people on the phone. Heck, I talk to tons of people on the phone. But I'm like, I'm not coming out during COVID because I don't know if you've got COVID. I've already had COVID. I don't want it again. I had it twice, actually.
Once was enough. Well,
I had it twice. It wasn't as bad the second time. Because I think, your body builds immunity to
sure.
it. So, So I'm like, no, I'm not coming out. We did go out towards the end, I think in 2020, towards the end of 2021, we did go to one family's home out in Massachusetts. I think it was out in Chicopee, Mass. And yeah, there was activity going on, and it turned out to be the place had been an old general store at one time. You could even tell it by the looks of the building. And she knew the history of it. She had looked it up herself, and you could see where the shop used to be and then where the part of the home used to be. And that's kind of what was going on. It was the shop owner was still kind of hanging out there and stuff. But they were noticing it because they were stuck in the house all the time. So her and her daughters were experiencing this stuff. So I said, it's nothing bad. Don't worry about it. Just, tell her, hey, knock it off. And she had put some stuff up that was like, she had a lot of knickknacks and stuff, and a lot of it was in the area that used to be the old store. So I think it took on the look like an old shop.
At the store, yes.
Yes, which kind of ramped up things a little bit. But I told her, I said, you really don't have anything to worry about. But we did get a couple EVPs there, and we did, I didn't even bother doing a cleansing because I said, you just got nothing bad here. If you want me to come back and do a cleansing, I will at some point. But realize who it is and just talk to them. And she did that, and things calmed down. So, that was the only case that we actually went out for. Maybe one other. I think we did one other one, too. But again, that was towards the end.
Right.
Not long before they, stopped all that stuff. So, COVID was pretty much over with. So, yeah, you just talk to people on the phone. It's like you're just noticing it because you're home all the time. It was going on before. You just didn't realize it. You didn't pay attention to it. That's really what it was,
Well,
but everybody thought everything was a demon. Because Because now they're at home watching those shows too. So, it's like, I got a demon in my... No, you don't. I guarantee you. Know what I mean?
It's not a demon. You can talk to me about it. It's not a demon.
Stop watching those TV shows.
That's funny, but true.
It is true.
Something that that really gets my attention. Well, I'm not even going to tell you. What are some flags that will let you know, nope, not touching this one, or, yep, these people seem to have something that's quite serious. We have to hit this hard. What are the questions for you that will get you there or get you gone?
There's two things I'll notice, or actually kind of three things, with that form. And that form is gold, really is. Thanks, Jason and Grant, for coming up with that thing. So, I think there was somebody else actually originally came up with it, but anyways, within their group. Thanks, Taps, for coming up with that. And that is what they're experiencing. Okay, the experiences they write down, the different things that are going on. The list of medications they're on, which will not cause the activity they say they're experiencing. Mm-hmm. And the fact, this is a big one, what they've had traumatically happen to them in the past. And some of that stuff it's extremely serious. It's family rape. It's just rape. It's drug addiction. And they're not addicted anymore, but they were, and they're still dealing with a lot of mental health issues because of the stuff they went through, but they're not getting help for it.
Right.
Okay, so those three factors, when you look at them and you see the details of the type of haunting they're experiencing, which is usually, they're hearing disembodied voices, or they're seeing shadow figures, and not all shadow figures are evil, don't get me wrong, but they're seeing shadow figures, and it's how they feel when they see them, which they're terrified. So that means that's what it's giving off. That to me is important, okay? Because one thing I'll ask them is, well, okay, you saw this shadow figure, you saw this apparition. How did you feel when you saw it? Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's just like, well, it was interesting. I wasn't scared, but it was like weird, and like, okay. And others will say, oh, I was terrified. Okay. That's the energy that this thing is giving off.
Right.
So that's important to recognize. They may also be experiencing things moving, right? So, PK stuff, that type of stuff, things moving on their own. So when you're looking at all that and you take it together, it's like, okay, well, biggest first thing is they filled that form out and sent it back. Well, they really want help.
In a timely fashion?
Yeah, in a timely fashion, like 15 minutes or the next day. And I didn't have to bug them, But it is those three things, and it's like, okay, we need to really... And then I'll talk to them on the phone, and go, okay, tell me more about this. And they'll start to explain more about their experiences. Sometimes you found they were into... they got into the dark stuff. Like they got involved with Satanism, things like that. They're no longer involved with it, but they did get involved with it, which is going to leave a lingering thing there. So you've got to, we've got to deal with that. You've got to get back to your faith. But you know what scares people more than their haunting? Okay, you know what really scares them more is when I tell them they're going to have to be an active participant in resolving their haunting. They go, what does that mean? I got to make suggestions for things you're going to have to do if you really want this to go away for good.
Yes.
And part of that is usually you have to go for counseling. I'm not your counselor. I'm not a counselor. I'm not a psychiatrist. You're going to have to go because you're going to have to deal with this stuff that you've been through. Because usually you'll ask them, they'll tell you things they'll never tell their family.
Absolutely.
Okay? Like,
and things you didn't really need to know.
They'll tell me that it was somebody in their family that raped them. I'm like,
yes.
Oh, I can't tell anybody in my family that. They wouldn't believe me. Right. Have you gone to counseling? No. I just dealt with it myself. No, you haven't dealt with it. You've just buried it. So now that energy is there. So negative things are attracted to that. And I tell them that. I said, you've got to go for counseling and help to get not past it, but come to terms with it and get through it and make it not rule your life. You can have a life
very
beyond.
Difficult. Yes,
it is, and it takes a long time. And I warned them about that. But the people who do follow that advice, their life turns around. It majorly turns around, and they look better and they feel better and they're more content realizing that it wasn't their fault, because a lot of times they blame themselves, and we can help them resolve the haunting. We can help them do the cleansings or do the exorcism on the house or whatever it's going to take, or on them sometimes. But it's a combination of all these things that helps them turn it around. And this is what other teams don't do. They don't follow through with all that stuff, because they don't know how. They don't know how. And this is part of what we teach getting into the advanced classes and stuff. So, how to deal with that, how to do that, how to get them the help, because you're not going to counsel them yourself, although they call me like I'm a counselor. But I'm like, I still remind them, I can talk to you, but I'm not a counselor.
But I'm not the one.
Take care of that. You still got to do that, and it takes a few months sometimes to finally realize, okay, yeah, I've got the courage enough now to reach out and get counseling. So, because I'll even look stuff up like, okay, I can tell you, a lot of people don't have insurance. They don't have okay, so here's some free counseling that you can get through services in your area. And they, people are weird about that because they're like, oh, I don't want to take a handout. Oh my God, it's not a handout. It's there for
It's not a handout. It's saving your life.
You're working, you're paying taxes. Trust me, it's not a handout.
Yes.
It's coming through your taxes. Trust me. So, but they feel weird, and it's like, it's going to be okay. If nothing else, you don't have to tell your family. You don't have to tell anybody else. If you really feel you need to talk to somebody else, you can always call me. I'll talk to you when I can, I said, but you do need to reach out for help, because that's the only way you're going to get through this and not have it.
Yeah, because
not have it make it's going to ruin the rest of your life if you don't. You're going to be trapped in that victim state. And you've got to get
the victimhood, but you're also manifesting.
Yes. Yeah.
You are creating this hell that you're living in because you feel like that's what you deserve.
Right.
And that's where I feel like, what you're doing is just invaluable, because by getting them to open up about what has happened, about the trauma in their life, and then getting them to where, okay, in order for this to be fixed, we have to address, the elephant in the corner.
Right.
And once you do that, then you've taken ownership of it. It doesn't control you anymore, and your life is going to be vastly improved. But you have to do the work to get there.
Right. Excellent way of stating that. Excellent way of stating that. And that's true. That is true. Nothing in life comes easy, right? I mean,
nothing worth having.
You got to work at everything you want to really do. Yeah. If you want to be successful with it, well, and that's even in just your own personal life. I mean, that is why, you stated something earlier that these people feel they deserve what they're getting.
Yeah.
And that is why, I'll admit, a lot of clients are women. It is why they end up with abusive, not soulmate, but abusive individuals that they marry or they date or whatever, because they feel that's what they deserve.
Or they have negative manifestations in their home to discipline themselves.
Yeah. Well, I actually had one woman even admit, she goes, well, I feel that's the kind of person I deserve. I'm like, no, you don't. Why? Because of what happened to you? Well, yeah. All right, this is why you need to go to counseling. Because you don't deserve that. That's just something that happened to you that somebody else did. You didn't do anything to deserve that.
Exactly.
Nobody does anything to deserve that. And they, sometimes it's just talking to them gets them to have that epiphany of, wow, but they always said it was my fault. Of course they did. They're the abuser.
And that's how they operate.
Yeah, that's how they operate.
That's what they do. Yeah.
Yeah, they want you to think it's your fault because they can't dare admit it's their fault. you know. Otherwise, they lose control over you, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah, so, you know, you have these conversations with people, and it suddenly dawns on them, oh my God, I never thought of that. And it's like, yeah, that's fine. So you don't have to live this way. You can, you know, can change your life. You just got to be willing to do the work it's going to take. But that's why it scares them, because I actually have to do something. Yep, there's no magic wand I can wave to make it all better. Sorry.
I can calm things down if you're buying into what I'm selling, but you know what? It's not going to last.
Well, even then, no, it won't last. It'll keep going, and sometimes
be here after I leave.
Yeah, sometimes there's people you can't help. You know, they enjoy being the victim. I think they enjoy being the victim. You know,
well,
and I've had a couple of those. You know,
well, they've cast themselves into that role so much, and then they have had people that were victimizing them tell them that, well, this is all your fault. I mean, what on earth? Why would you be like that?
Yeah.
Well, then, they're just blown away, and then the whole cycle starts up. That's why the counseling it's not just for the hauntings, the manifestations and stuff. No. It's so that they can be healed.
Yes.
As well as
that's definitely what the counseling is about. The counseling really isn't about the paranormal at all.
No,
it's about them. Yeah, but it does connect, because if they don't get that help, that negativity they hold within themselves still attracts more negative things to them.
Yeah.
You know, and that's on a spiritual level as well as a physical level. You know, let's face it, an abuser can pick out a victim real easy. They can tell.
They've got a lot of practice at it.
Well, yeah, they know how to recognize them. You know, and when they see somebody who seems more stronger and more, resilient, they avoid them. They look for, it's just like a demonic. They look for the weakest link. You know.
That's true.
For the weakest person, because a weak person's easy to control. You know, a strong person isn't. So, yeah.
Well, and that's where the things happen where you have to be able to say, okay, I'm having a moment. Mm-hmm. I mean, when I was hurt, I don't investigate.
Right.
Because, well, A, because I wasn't very mobile, but B, because if your mind is not focused, if you can't center yourself, then, you go into a situation in a vulnerable state, and things can occur.
Right.
And I know that's probably, that self-protection is something that you teach in your classes too, right?
That's another part we do talk about is if you're feeling sick, if you're sick, you're ill, you're injured, don't go. Don't go. Because, number one, you're putting yourself at risk, and you're also putting the rest of your team at risk.
Yeah.
Not just on a spiritual level, but also a physical level. Because if something happens to you while you're there, you start getting really ill and you start throwing up and stuff, somebody's got to take care of you, get you home. So now you've disrupted the whole process anyway. Whether it's usually if you're talking about client, whether it's a historical site or a residential case, you don't want to bring that to those places anyway. Because you're putting the clients and stuff at risk too. Especially if you're ill, you're gonna give that to everybody. Don't do that. Stay home.
That's a no-brainer.
If you're injured, I don't want to have to carry you up the stairs. If you got a sprained ankle, whatever, don't, because you could end up with a broken ankle. Don't. Just stay home. It's okay. We can get along without you being there. Don't worry. Not that we don't want you there, but we'll manage. So, because we've done that. I mean, I've had to do that, and so have other of my team members and spirits and stuff. We've had to say, look, I'm really sick. I can't make this. So we either reschedule or the rest of the team would go. Like, if I was sick, Ellen would always, well, we're rescheduling. That's it. Nope, we're rescheduling. She wouldn't go without me. So it's like, okay, if that's what you want to do. So she'd call up and reschedule and, all that stuff. So that was usually our modus operandi. Like if one of us was sick or something, we'd reschedule with the clients. So people get mad sometimes when I say clients. I say, what else you want me to call them? Well, client says you're charging them. No, not really.
That doesn't.
No, that doesn't indicate. To some people it does. It's like, well, what do you want me to call them if they're not a client? I'm still helping them. I'm still So they're still a client per se.
Well, customers pay too, so what are you going to, you can't call them a customer.
Yeah, they're not a customer. Yeah, they're a client, I think people confuse client with customer. Customer is somebody who is paying you, Client is just somebody assisting, in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
To me, anyway, that's the distinction. So, but so we used to do that. We used to just reschedule, and that's okay. If you're sick, you're sick. If you're injured, you're injured. Don't come because it's not going to be good. So, and if it happens while you're there, I mean, if you come there and you feel fine, you get injured or you get sick, that's a whole nother matter altogether. But I always tell the teams, like, if your partner's with you and they suddenly say they're sick or they don't feel right, I said, you walk out. I said, take them out of the building. You walk out with them. You don't let them walk out on their own. You walk out with them. And first thing you do is call the rest of the team on the walkie and say, hey, so-and-so's not feeling good. We're heading out to the building. And, usually I'll go out and join them, or whoever's in charge will go out and join them. I teach them that too. Make sure you check on your people. Make sure they're okay. If somebody gets injured, like they fall, break a leg, I said the first thing you do is, if you're with your partner, you call 911 before you call anybody else. Yeah. I said, don't bother calling us. You can tell us after the fact, hey, so-and-so fell, they think their leg's broken. We just called 911. Okay, no problem.
Yeah, because, they are not going to appreciate you not calling 911.
Right. I always teach them that. Call 911 first before you call the rest of the team, because that person is more important.
Have you had
tell
that
the rest
happen?
of us later.
Have you had a team member become injured?
No, nothing like that. I mean, one of us, like, I don't know. I think I cut my finger one time on something, but we keep a first aid kit. Nothing serious. We've had people bang into tables and bump their knee. So in the dark, things like that. But nobody ever got really hurt. No, knock on wood. So, been lucky that way. I've had people get sick and throw up, and it turned out to be from high EMF. The EMF was so high.
That is, yes.
That's
one of the things.
Like, it was pinned out throughout the entire house. Ellen actually is the one that threw up and got sick.
Well, what was creating that?
Just the electricity in the house. The wiring was awful. Nothing was grounded properly. They had Christmas lights up all over the place. And those lights were giving off all kinds of EMF. It was just, it's just bad wiring and stuff. Yeah.
Wow.
Literally. Yeah. Which can cause activity, by the way, both on a psychological level, because you can start to hallucinate, but it can actually feed activity too. So we did get some activity going on there, EVPs and stuff like that, but that was with a different, we were assisting another team at the time. I don't know what totally became of that case, because we were just helping them out, and then, Ellen and I were helping them out, and kind of faded off after that. So I think they ended up being able to help the people, but, the biggest thing was, hey, you need to have because they were renting the place, you need to have your renter come in and address that electrical. Because it's an old building. It was like a 200-year-old building, or 100-and-some-year-old building, and it was just poor wiring, which is dangerous in itself, So,
well, yes.
it caused fires eventually, Well,
it causes fires, and my goodness, yes.
Yeah, it can, yeah. So that's what it was. I mean, it's just like, get rid of those Christmas lights, number one. But they look pretty. Yeah, well, they're giving off such high EMF. No wonder you guys are feeling ill all the time,
And hearing things and saying things. Because, I mean, I can, and I'm sure other people can. I can hear electricity.
Can you hear that buzzing, like a buzzing sound?
Yeah, and I mean, it doesn't have to be from the street lights, because those are louder.
Yes.
But like if you drive from Fort Lauderdale down to the Keys, then all of those super high power lines that are, the first time I did it, I was in a convertible, and I was like, what is that? Because it wouldn't.
Buzzing noise,
and my husband looked at me like I had lost my mind. But I mean, when you're sensitive, you're sensitive to a lot of things.
Yes. Yeah.
And so I can tell if I'm in a house that's poorly done, such as the one you mentioned.
Yeah.
And I would think that other sensitives with you would be able to know that,
everybody picked up on, I can tell you, everybody picked up on that one. That's how bad it was, even the non-sensitive people. So even gave me a headache. I mean, it was giving me a headache. Yeah.
I mean, high EMF is no joke.
No, it's not.
It
can really make you ill.
It can make you very ill. And it can make your activity make you crazy because it's creating the activity.
That's it.
You know, it's because it gets in your head.
Yeah. Yeah.
As well as your system. It's just so unhealthy.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is. Well, actually, if you have long-term exposure to it, it can even cause cancer. So
yes.
You know, people don't realize that. But, I mean, it takes quite a long time, you know. But I don't know how many years they've been living there. So it's potentially possible they could, you know, I did tell them that. I said, you know, it's not good because depending on how long you're here, long-term exposure can cause cancer, you know, to that. So they're like, what? Like, yeah. You want to talk to your guy you're renting from. Have it taken care of, you know, because technically he is responsible.
Well, yeah, but technically, if it's a rental, he probably wasn't going to do anything.
Yeah. No, usually they don't.
Well, because that's serious money. And
yes, it can. Yeah, it definitely can be. You know,
because you have to go through the whole house.
Renting, you're charging all this extra money. That's what it's supposed to be for, to do repairs with. You know, never is. You know, they just put it
never
in their pocket.
is.
No, just put it in their pocket. Unfortunately, you know. Yeah.
But you know, that's something else too. If somebody is in a rental, like it's not your home, like, you know, there's transient people coming through, not transients, like, you know, but
no, I know what you mean. Yeah.
But, you know, it's more likely to not necessarily be somebody that's theirs, right?
Correct. Yes. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. It could be anybody. Yeah. It may not be a family member that's there. It could be anything, you know, anything. You just don't
Literally.
know. Yeah,
Literally.
because you don't know who's lived there before or what they were into or what they were doing. You have no idea. I mean, you know, I've run into that before. Like, there's rumors, like, you know, one place we're at, there's like, oh, the woman who was here before was a witch, and, you know, she had a spell on her husband and she killed him. And it's like, you don't know how much of that's true. Yeah, you know, because actually when we started looking through, you know, looking into the details, you can actually look up stuff online for, you know, police reports for the home and stuff. Like, we couldn't find anything. Or even somebody even died in that home. And supposedly he died in the house. You know, it's like, if that was the case, there'd be a police report on it. Because it occurred supposedly, it was only like 5 years ago. You know, so that was like, it would have been like 2002 or something like that. It's like, no, there's nothing. That's all made up, you know. So
urban legends.
Yeah,
so much
I mean,
fun.
maybe the guy did die. He got taken to the hospital. He died in the hospital. You know, something like had a heart attack, something like that. And maybe the woman was a little odd, so they thought she was a witch. You know, because it was a little bit, you know, rougher neighborhood area. So not terrible, but yeah, still a bit rougher, a little bit rougher neighborhood. There was a lot of crime in that area, but you know, we didn't have any problems when we were there. So, but mostly it was a lot of drug-related crime, you know, people selling drugs, stuff like that. You know, small robberies, things like that. So, you know, but we didn't have any problems. And it wasn't constant, you know, it was just, you know, a little bit higher crime area than most.
It happens.
It is. I mean, yeah, everybody lives in different places. But they actually did have some really interesting activity going on in their house, in their place and stuff. So it was an interesting investigation. We were able to help them. But they found out their house, their bed's shaking at night. They reported their bed's shaking at night. And I'm like, well, how do they, you know, and everybody upstairs reported their bed would shake from, you know, side to side. Right? And mother said, well, my bed shakes from head to foot, and it always happens to all of us at the same time. And so when I looked at it, I went upstairs and looked at the orientation of all the beds and went down to the mother's. All the beds upstairs were oriented the same way. The mother's was oriented perpendicular to theirs. So it made sense, right?
Right.
Turns out in that particular area in Massachusetts, they have a lot of earthquakes. It's on a fault line. And there are these kind of earthquakes that are like 0.3 on the Richter scale, 0.2. But they feel them up on the mountain, up on the hillside, because it's all granite. And I actually talked to somebody from the USGS about it. And she goes, oh, yeah, I used to live there. She goes, I used to feel. She goes, were they up on the hill? I said, yeah. She goes, oh, yeah, that's where I live. I felt them all the time. She goes, down in the valley, it's all clay and sand, and nobody feels them at all. You know, but up on the mountain, because all the houses sit on the granite and the stone.
Which has no give.
Yeah, they feel them all the time. She goes,
wow.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. You know, so that's what they were experiencing.
How smart are you?
Hey, you got to look into all this stuff. I cover this in all my classes. I talk about this. Yeah, there's other things besides. You got to consider this. Do your research. Find out what's going on. You know, you got to do your research. It's not always just a ghost that's shaking their beds. You know, so people don't realize that, and that's one thing people lack in is doing research. You know, not everybody.
And you know, the research is the fun part.
It is to me. I mean people, I know you like it too. Yeah,
I do love it.
Yeah,
but.
Yeah. And that's what I find in my classes, too. There's always one or two people who love to do research. So when we break up the teams, I make sure each one of those, like one of those type of people is on one of the teams, you know.
That's smart.
Because it's important. The research is important, you know. And they really get into it. They go digging and they find out everything. It's like, wow, you guys did a good job, you know. Did a great job, you know. Because it is important. It's important to do your research, you know. What could be causing?
You know, not knowing, like you with the house shaking.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't just the bed shaking; it was the whole mountain.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was the whole house too. Yeah, because we actually experienced it the night we were there.
Really?
We felt the whole house shake.
And that's
I'm like,
was
and
that
I knew
what
immediately
keyed you
what
in?
it was. Yeah, I know. I knew. I said, we're having an earthquake, seismic event. And the reason they're like, well, I said, I spent a lot of time out in Yuma, Arizona, and out in California. I know what this is. You know, because you get small ones out there all the time too. You know,
yeah.
And it's like, yeah, no, this is we're having a small earthquake. They're like, what? We don't have them here. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. In fact, it was the river that ran through the town was the actual fault line. So
interesting.
People don't think about that. Yeah, because it's Massachusetts. Yeah, but yeah, we have fault lines out here on the East Coast as well as the West Coast does. Yeah.
Well, and I know that because of our friend Tom Conwell and his books.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Toss the UFOs and everything in there, and it's not nearly what you think.
No, it's exactly right. Exactly right. So, but we just don't get them as often as the West Coast gets them. That's all.
Well, or at least as big. I mean, we get them here in Alabama, just very rarely. But
well, there's fault lines down there too. You know,
it's freaky. I mean, when I was in California, I went to work and I was sitting there on my computer, and there was like ceiling debris dropping.
Oh.
And I sat there and I was like, just very fine though.
Yeah.
And I sat there and I'm just working away and I'm like, what is this? It was getting on my nose. Yuck. And I was like, holy crap, tremors. I was out the door.
Yeah.
But it was so funny because it was just little baby tremors. And but I was really close to the epicenter of that north
the big one they have
Northridge. Yeah. And I was like, nope. Not just no.
Yeah, I felt them here every so often. They actually is on like the Connecticut-Massachusetts border. There's a big fault line down there, and every so often it'll really slip and go off. And I feel it here in my house, where my whole house was shaking.
Wow.
I was laying in bed the one time it happened. I think it was like in my early 20s. I was laying in bed, just getting ready to get up, and the whole bed started shaking. I thought I had a fever for a minute. Then I noticed the whole house was shaking. It's like, And then it was reported there had been a 2-point-some or 3-point-some earthquake. Not epicenter, not like 20 miles away or 30 miles away or whatever. So, that's what that was. Okay.
Well, we are out of time. We're going to have to give the mic to the next guy.
All right.
But I am so glad that you joined me tonight. Thank you.
Thanks for having me again.
Well, I learn so much every time I talk to you. I just enjoy it. And I just like you. So, it's all good.
Same here, Kat. Well, I'll say this. If anybody wants to find information on me, you can go to my website, jackkenna.org, so JACKKENNA.org, or my Facebook page. You can go to Facebook, just look me up, Jack Kenna, on there, and you'll find me.
And all of that is in the information for the show tonight. You can find that on Facebook at Paranormal Experience with Kat Hobson.
Awesome.
So, thank you, Jack.
Anytime.
And you know what? We are out, but that's not going to be the end of your night, because coming up behind us, we are going to have Clyde Lewis with Ground Zero here on the X. Enjoy.